Hello, sales creators, or what I like to call salesters. I am Ishita, and my guest today is someone who has had sales career, whose sales career spans more than 3 decades. A sales leader, trainer, coach, and a women in sales champion. Forbes recognized her as one of the top 30 social sales influencers worldwide. LinkedIn recognized her as among top voices in sales 2018. She's the founder of Women Sales Pros and Score More Sales, the author of She Sells, and an international keynote speaker, Lori Richardson. Welcome to the show, Lori. It is so good to
Oh,
have you here.
it's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Lori, your journey is very, very interesting. You started here as a teacher and then jumped into sales, which I'm sure must have been a huge transition. Can you share what all challenges you faced and when you entered the field of sales and how you overcame them?
Yeah, when I was a teacher, I was working with very young children, preschool age children, and that's a very low paying career in United States. And I became a single parent. So I had to do something, and I wanted to find a career that would where I would make the same amount of money as a male counterpart. So I looked around, I looked at all sorts of different careers, and I remembered that, I grew up in a family business. My grandmother had a women's clothing store that I grew up in, and I knew how to sell. And I'm not sure if I used those words at that time, but I was looking at the technology industry, which was really booming. And I thought maybe I could sell something in technology. And I just kind of stumbled my way. It was not a very formal, organized, or guided plan. It was kind of, you know, trying something and hoping that it might work out. And as it turned out, it was a good move. And I've been around technology sales and salespeople and companies ever since.
That is so inspiring. I'm sure not only the women but men in professions other than sales would be encouraged to hear this. So, Lori, you're from working with Fortune 500 companies like Apple and Siemens to finding your own venture, Score More Sales. How did that happen?
Yeah, I was in the technology space for about 15 years, and then I dabbled in some other industries, financial services, for example. My last corporate job was with a financial services, kind of a fintech company. They were doing things on the web and turning into just digital offerings that had never been done before. But it was all around financial services rather than technology. And after working at that company, I realized that I really didn't want to go into sales again. And I really didn't want to be a sales leader. So I thought, well, maybe I could help companies to sell more, sell better. And and my old company, who had downsized me because we were about to be acquired, they actually became my first client. And so it was a pretty safe transition initially. And then, of course, I had to learn to build up my marketing, build my brand in order to have an ongoing business, which I have had now for about 18 years.
Wow, that is such a great journey. So, what pushed you to launch a platform like Women Sales Pros? What is the story behind it?
I know you interviewed Jill Conrath previously, and Jill had actually launched a an event where she and I and a lot of other people, a lot of women, were tired of going to conferences here in the States where all the sales experts were men. This was about 10, 12 years ago. And Jill wanted to have an event that was all women, women salespeople, and she wanted all the presenters to be women, which was, unheard of, never happened before. So she did it. And as it turned out, she's not really a meeting planner. She's a speaker and an author. And so she didn't enjoy putting it all together. It was so much work. And, she lost money doing it. And she said, I'll never do that again. But the women that got together to speak, the experts, if you will, we all hit it off, and we wanted to meet the next year and the year after and the year after. So Jill had this group, and ultimately she turned it over to me, and I rebranded it to Women's Sales Pros. And I added, in addition to having this group of sales experts, which we still have to this day, we have 50 women sales experts on the Women's Sales Pros website. Additionally, we now have, we've expanded to help companies that want to add women to their sales teams, want to be more inclusive, and want to learn how to retain, a more diverse portfolio of people, if you will, to the sales team. So that's what we help them do, and we support all the other groups for women in sales, of which there are now 10 or 12 that I know of that have good sized memberships. It's really grown in the last few years.
Yes, I completely agree. In fact, it is so good to have a platform that speaks for women in sales. And, usually sales does not feature in the top three career choices for women. So, what do you think? How can we change that?
We need to educate women and girls in high school. I've spoken at high schools where I live, and many of the young women have never heard of, a sales career. I think that the men hid that from us for a long time. And I didn't know there was a real career called sales, and that, you could do that for your whole life, and make a really good living and support your family if you chose to. So it's really about education, and also the stigma of sales, at least in the West. It's about sales being kind of slimy and not as ethical, which women like ethics. We're the nurturers, we're the caretakers of the world, and we want to work for companies that have good ethics and good guidelines, and we want career growth. And so companies need to really position themselves in that way in order to have more women be attracted to their job openings and interest in coming on to their company.
That is very interesting. It would be so good to see a world where even young girls aspire to become saleswomen or salesters. So, you have been an advocate for the need for diversity in B2B sales, which is very different from B2C sales. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just one day I was speaking in about 2015, I think it was, and I was going to present to a company I'd been working with for a while, but I worked with all of their different offices, and we had never brought all the managers together. So on this day, all the managers came together, and when I walked into the room, I saw almost 100 people, and about three of them were women. And I just thought, this is crazy. It seemed to me like the 1990s. And I just wondered, why hasn't anything changed? Because when I got into sales, I was the only woman. And in one company, they had never hired a woman in sales. And I had to, jump through a lot of hoops to get them to give me a chance. And I thought, so many years later, why haven't things changed? Because we know women can be really great in sales. We know that women can be great leaders. And it was just unconscious bias. It was people hiring the same people over and over. And I just started doing research at that point and started looking into how I could make changes. Some of the things I've thought about are in my upcoming book, and they have to do with every step of the process, from attracting more women to a sales team, to recruiting them in the right way, and then onboarding in the right way, and then promoting them and retaining them. Every one of those steps, there are issues that companies have had, and I talk to mostly male sales leaders and company leaders, but also women as well that are in C-level and executive HR positions, about how can they not only hire more women but then retain them. So there's just no one perfect answer, but it's many different things that companies can change it slowly, or they can work on multiple areas. There are definitely things they can do to be more successful at this.
That, in fact, I was about to ask you about She Sells, your upcoming book, and it sounds like a great read, something that every salesperson would be inclined to read. So, you also help companies hire the right sales reps by analyzing the data. Can you tell
Yeah.
us how that works, especially in the current scenario?
Yeah, this tied into the fact that I was a sales trainer for a long time, and I would call myself, what I used to be was a reactive sales trainer. So you might call me and say, "Hey, I need someone to do a virtual half day sales training on, LinkedIn prospecting, or some topic that I was teaching on." And I would customize it, I would present it. I think you would like it. And I think you would say, "Oh, everyone liked it." That's generally what I heard. I got very positive feedback. But when I would come back and say, "Can you tell me how much it helps your salespeople?" Nobody knows, because sales training is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's so hard to measure. And I think the older I got, the more I did it, the more frustrating it became to me. So I started looking for ways to measure sales teams, measure sales performance. And I ended up with a process that we now have, where we can look at a company initially, we can look at an existing sales team, and we can look at the performance of the people, the reps, the sales managers. We look at their pipeline, we look at the process, and then we'll do training and coaching, and then we'll go back and measure it again. And it's so interesting because we can see the changes. And in companies where they say, "You know what, we don't want any training," but we go back in a year and we remeasure everything, and they don't have much change. So it helps them to see the value of a good, solid training and coaching program, where the managers have to be a part of it. The managers have to be supportive, and they have to have use accountability for their salespeople, and the salespeople need to be coachable, and all these different things work together for success. So I've learned a lot over the last 7 years in how a sales team really functions well. And there are about 21 competencies for salespeople, and there are about 20 competencies for sales managers. If people really work on this together, they can do great things.